You've got to manage your own ego inside of you because yourself wants to retaliate.
If we are sincere in our worship, we will be aware of the blessings and the gratitude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us every single day.
The hadith of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, when you have conflict and you disagree with your brother, what do? You step back. You don't confront for 3 nights, right? Why 3 nights?
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to episode 1, season 2 of the On Purpose podcast. We have with us today myself, Feda, Hajeh Maha, and Nemat. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So alhamdulillah, we have come back for season 2 after our award-winning season 1 of the On Purpose podcast. And this season we'll be really delving into a bit of a behind the scenes at MWA, looking at the way that we have been able to navigate in the community as an organisation that is now over 40 years old. And our topic for today is Ukhuwwah, and looking at brotherhood, sisterhood and collective strength. And it's something that I know we've all really been leaning on a lot. And so the way that we want to progress this discussion today is not just in our professional, hat and how we professionally put all of these things into action, but also as complete human beings, as whole selves. So maybe we'll start with, sharing a little bit about how we've interacted, how long we've been working together, the different ways. And maybe, Nemat, I'll throw to you to get us started.
All right, Jazakallah khairan. Well, I'm excited to be back for season 2. SubhanAllah, if we reflect on season 1, we were in the middle of COVID. And so we are very much in a different part and time of the world for this season. And I think that's why it's a beautiful topic to start with Ukhuwwah. For me, I grew up with the organization. I went to the youth leadership camps. I've been able to develop personally, professionally, spiritually, and even as a mother and as a wife and as a person. So I feel honored and privileged to be here to speak about this topic with people that I truly consider my sisters and my mentors. And it's a beautiful topic to bring us together in very many different ways. So I'm excited to explore this with you. And Hajeh Maha, what about you?
Yeah, it's I love this topic because it's something that is just very close to our heart and subhanAllah, for me to say, I was literally I grew up in this organization because when I came in, in the 80, that time was I was very young and very much just finding my own self. And so getting into the organization was the most important thing in my life, the best thing that ever has happened, because when you work with women and men, of course, but when you work with people who are sincerely interacting from a very strength-based approach of Ukhuwwah, it may seem sometimes like it's not the in thing, because you are doing something that is so important. You are reliving the life that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us to live. So I say my children grew up in the organization and we've all benefited together. It's been a reciprocated way of learning and growing and understanding the real meaning of Ukhuwwah in action, because you hear so much about I love you lillah, but then, if it's lillah, it lasts forever.
Yeah,
right? And this is where I feel like, subhanAllah, when we're talking about Ukhuwwah, over the years, people say, I have friends come in and drop off and off. But when you sincerely have built Ukhuwwah lillah, no matter what happens, no one drops off.
Yeah.
They will go back, retrieve and come back in. And I think that's where it would be really important to explore that today. And as a mother and and a grandmother, I've evolved over the years, and I see how inshallah I'm able to just give back each individual's role and agency to be able to understand Ukhuwwah from their own perspective, because it's not about tick the box thing. It's about really understanding the meaning of love lillah, for the sake of committing yourself to a particular issue or a cause, which is abudiyah. Na'budullah ka'annana nara. So we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we see him and he sees us. So from that place is where I, inshallah, I'd like to explore.
Yeah, inshallah.
Together.
Inshallah. Yeah. And I myself, as someone who's grown up in the organization, and like with you, Nemat, going through those leadership camps. And I think the thing that we see when we interact with so many different people who have had those different connections with MWA is we went to your camps, we were part of your youth groups. And that really played quite a formative part in how we developed our own sense of self.
Yeah.
And we know that in, MWA this year is 42, 43. And we really hold that in high esteem that, like Hajeh Maha, when you came into the organization was 5 years old, right?
Yeah,
like when you
not
said
yet.
88,
Yeah,
like a few years old, we
yeah.
were still in those toddler
Still in
stages.
that sort of a very, very close-knit group of women who just sat together, brought their children together, and really, really built that sort of like that support.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about, and it grew and evolved from that place of strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that really forms that sort of core part of why we're talking about this topic, because things are hard now for everyone, and we live in quite a luxury sort of the way we live our lives, the things that we have, the amenities we have, all of that. But there are things that keep battling us internally and externally, and if it wasn't for the fact that we have each other, how would we have kept going, right? So if we can, I think, look at a little bit of reflections on maybe, Nemat, the intergenerational lens and Ukhuwwah, like what's that got to do with the concept of Ukhuwwah?
I think it's such a beautiful thing. I think in our Western society, we can be so like insular and isolated. And that's, I think, why this conversation is so important, because when I grew up in the organization, I literally remember sitting under a tree, being mentored by Hajeh Maha, having connections to other women in the community. And that wasn't just facilitated by myself. My parents invested in me in that way. They trusted, they understood that other people are going to have to play different roles in your life at different points in time. We cannot be, as mothers or as women or as people, everything to everyone. But that doesn't mean we can't play a really important role in someone's life or someone's moment. And engagement and ukhuwwah and sincerity and sisterhood doesn't have to be some big thing. A lot of the times it's feeling seen, heard, supported, valued, cared for. And those are not in the big everyday stuff, like the big stuff. They're in the little everyday things. And so for me, when I think about those intergenerational connections, they are vital. They are actually anchors. They anchor you in yourself. They anchor you in your soul. They anchor you in your relationship and your sense of purpose. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create me? How do I renew my attention every single day? This didn't just come about because, I'd woke up. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whispered, he taught Prophet Adam alayhi salam. Even the angels asked. How do I know that? Because Hajeh Maha told me.
Yeah.
She gave me the book. Even angels asked other people. So there's that intergenerational connection is so important, because that is the passing on of the baton. It's, we are in a temporary world. Our lives are temporary. But how do we use this time to take us to that eternal world without us losing our sense of focus? So, when I say I grew up in the organization, for me, when there was the whole war on terror, all of that, I felt very lost. I felt very confused. So a sense of inclusion and belonging and dignity and connection can change someone's life. They change people's lives all the time. And so I really feel like that sense of respect for our elders, and for the young people, they have so much to offer as well. But we need to stay connected. We need to cultivate that in an environment and a digital age that doesn't cultivate that. There are so many people that feel a huge sense of loneliness, a huge sense of disconnection, and we shouldn't have that. Not because there's something wrong, but it's the environment. If you change the environment, something blooms, and we need to create and be part of that environment that we want to cultivate for the now and for our future generations, inshallah.
That's so true. Can I add on more about that? I think you've just touched on a very, very important thing. It's about the environment. where most people spend their time on social media.
Yeah.
Intergenerational strength does not happen on social media because you don't know
Yeah.
who's who on the other side. And what we've done is we've given permission to young people to dumb themselves down, because when you really interact really with that sincere ukhuwwah with other people that you don't see eye to eye, but you get to learn so much about how you resolve certain things, what you do when that person does that, how you actually you put ukhuwwah into action. And that can only be learned when there's one-on-one interaction, in that sense of that unity, that either community, that gathering, events. Otherwise, we're going to lose that true essence of humanity. And ukhuwwah can only happen when we be. It's not about becoming kind to one another, and being aware of one another, and allowing young people to make mistakes without taking away their agency. And I think that's what ukhuwwah is all about. You implement, you invest. The way that we interact with one another is that you add strength to each other. So in this day and age that we're seeing right now, what's happening around us, it's so hard. It's so hard for all of us. But what keeps us going, knowing that we can lean on each other. When one of us is having a bad day, can actually honestly say in the morning, send a message, say, I'm not feeling well today. You have every right. Step back and I'll step in. That's ukhuwwah. The same thing with your siblings. The same thing with your co-workers, with your friends. So how are you engaging in that sense of friendship when you don't understand the meaning of ukhuwwah that is internally built? So how do we build that ukhuwwah from within our Islamic traditions?
Yeah. So we're really looking at ukhuwwah in this holistic, collective way, as opposed to individual. And one of the things that we really want to unpack, because we don't want to just add words to the world, right? There's so much talk, and there are so many podcasts that exist. And, this podcast isn't new, and we don't want to just put things out, for views and likes. We really want to just delve deeper and create that sense of self-reflection as well. So what am I doing? What's my sense of responsibility? And how am I connecting with the people around me? Because if we're not connecting with the people around us, what are we actually doing? We do have a sense of responsibility to each other. So as part of our format for our podcast, we do want to, sort of create those further bonds as well, and give some examples of how to generate love between each other, how to generate compassion, how to be there for one another as well. And we're going to look into lots of different things, and I'm sure we'll touch on politics and community and motherhood and parenting and all sorts of things. But the self is actually the center here. So how do you make the self center without being selfish, right? And how do you learn from others when maybe you're not in a place where you're ready to receive? There's lots of those sort of different things. So just for some, lightness, and remind each other that we do need to look for moments of grace in the world around us. Nemat, what's something recently that's happened to you that has made you smile?
Oh, subhanAllah. Yes, there's everyday things that should make us smile. If we are sincere in our worship, then we will be aware of the blessings and the gratitude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us every single day. Waking up every day is a blessing. Renewing our intention for that day to make everyday actions is a blessing. So what happens was a funny story, actually. I have, alhamdulillah, I'm a mother of 4. I have my youngest daughter. It was a play on words. So it's a very cold week here in Sydney, despite the heat last week. And so she was saying, "Oh, chilly, I want it's so chilly." And then she was confused by the term, is it chilly when it's hot, when it's food, or is it chilly when it's cold outside? And so I just had a little giggle around the play on words with chilly, but it just reminded me about the importance of language, different meanings, different contexts. Like even in that moment, it was a reflection around how the same word can mean different things in different times to different people.
Yeah,
It was just
exactly.
it was a funny little
Yeah, that's right. That is because chili means hot and cold at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, so really looking at little things in the world around us, yeah, can make us well. But even on that you can interpret just one thing in multiple ways. So no one's going to know what you mean by that unless you explain.
SubhanAllah.
But the innocence of children is to ask the question.
Yeah, that's right.
Ask the
that's
actual
right,
question,
that's right.
subhanallah.
Yeah.
So Hajeh, I have a question for you. Okay? This is one that we want to get your insights on. If you could have dinner with any Muslim woman from history or from the present time, who would it be and why?
Oh, subhanallah. I'd love to have a banquet. If we're thinking one that comes to my mind at the moment is Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. I think about Sayyidina Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. As a mother, and as someone who is, in a position of leadership, I see having a conversation around dinner with Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha about, the insights of, leading with purpose and leading to change. And especially when things come that are, you're walking uncharted territories, from her life, radiallahu anha, her interaction with Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, the age difference in this day and age. How can we, in the work that we do, the advice that she would give about having older women who've been divorced, marrying, for the second time. How does that work? All of that is really, would be really what I would want to know more about, as she shines, radiallahu anha, shines the light on women in such a way beyond that the body. The women that is a woman of faith, a woman of business, a woman who is compassionate, who supports her husband, doesn't shy away. And and right now we say, if I break down, the whole house breaks down. It's the balance tips. Yeah, it does. And Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha held it together. And when she left this world, for how long did Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam still held her? And you can see how Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha was mirroring everything that her mother, she had seen her mother do. It wasn't that she was the youngest. So how, I think the dinner would not be anything to eat food. It would be just to nourish my soul more than anything else. Because I visualize not the person, but the ruh of Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. And what would she advise us as women now in this day and age of the way she resisted in the early days of hardship, and and not giving up with purpose, and still being steady and accepting the message that came to her. So I think all of that would be.
That would be. It sounds like an amazing.
Yeah.
If we could, that would be so beautiful. Inshallah in Jannah. Inshallah, ya Rab. Inshallah. And even like when we look at her and how she was with the women around her, like she was known as Sayyidat Nisa Quraysh, the leader of the women of Quraysh, even before marriage to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning the women admired her. So just that example of ukhuwwah between women, if a woman is excelling and if a woman is advancing in different parts of her life, how do other women come together to support her? Right? Not bring her down, but actually come together to support her. And so when it comes to this concept of ukhuwwah, and the reason why we keep using that word, not brotherhood or sisterhood, is because the Arabic ukhuwwah itself doesn't have a gender, right? So when we translate in English, we have to say brotherhood and sisterhood, right? It means both of those. But when we talk about the akh, the brother or the sister, talking about siblings, but also as an ummah, as a community, we are connected as Ukhuwwah to one another. So that word being used really, really sort of centers for us that as a community of Muslims, right? And especially we're Australian Muslims. Why are we talking about the concept of Ukhuwwah? And we know that, we know in our traditions, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the Ummah is like you mentioned, like one body. So if one part has pain, another part feels fever or feels that pain. So that means for us, it's not just about what our Muslim brothers and sisters are going through here in Sydney, Australia. It also is about what the Muslims are going through in Palestine, in Sudan, in Lebanon, in Uyghur, like all over the world. And that's something that is actually innate. It's part of our ruh, right?
Yeah.
It's part of us. So where do we want to put Ukhuwwah into action, right? We're talking about putting into action in this individual versus collective sort of way that we're looking at things. How can we, Nemat, look at it in a way that's more than just a feeling?
Yeah.
What are your reflections on that?
Well, you said a few things earlier that make me reflect. So first of all, yes, we've got, that the Ummah is one body. And if one part aches, we feel it elsewhere. We've also got, that you love for your brother and sister, what you love for yourself, and that wanting for others to grow and expand. But I think you said a word which was grace before. And if you don't understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being merciful and worship from that place of love, and then you don't cultivate within yourself grace, having rahmah towards yourself and that understanding, then you can't extend that grace towards others. And I think that's really important, because when we talk about, making 70 excuses for someone else, we can make 70 excuses for ourselves sometimes easily. I'm too tired, I'm too busy, and whatever. But what does that actually look like in action? Yeah, it is having grace. It's having understanding. It's reaching a helping hand. It's not just being a taker. It's also being a giver. A lot of the time we see strong women exercising their agency in their family life, in their professional life, in their community life. And people just think, oh, she's just so capable and it's so easy. But sometimes we actually need to reach out to those people as well. So in your everyday actions, it's also keeping people in your dua. Like if you do love someone fully, they don't leave. They might, there's the saying, they're here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. But no, in our traditions, we're always making dua for people. And if we make dua for others, the angels make dua for us. So it's not just seeing things from this dunya lens. It's also actually about being connected. We're part of a chain. We're part of the chain. We're part of this ummah. This ummah started. We haven't met Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We haven't met, Sayyidina Khadija, but we're connected to them and their stories. But we need to bring that to our everyday life. Sometimes it feels removed from us, but it is as simple as renewing our intention every day. It is as simple as, cultivating mahabbah between your children, checking in on your siblings, making forgiveness. When we're not going to stay in this dunya forever.
So true.
And so those are some of the things that come to my mind, but I'd love to hear your reflections.
Yeah, and especially, but on, because Namas mentioned, grace and 70 excuses, but also, so when you go on it, because you've been through a lot in the community, and sometimes you're just like, well, why should I make an excuse for this when I know, what that person, that person did it.
Yeah.
So how do you balance between that?
And I guess grace and accountability.
Yeah. And I think because that's something we all struggle with, in a real way, not just, with struggles we face.
It is a struggle.
Yeah.
Every day you wake up, you need to be able to be aware of where you're at, and the more you struggle for a purpose, the purpose is lillah, you know that you're struggling, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change what you think cannot be changed, right? There are days where you think, I've had enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't trust people. But hey, are you doing this for the sake of people? You're doing it for lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is it's not just a concept that you just put up the top, like, this is our concept of this is really, this is in action. And it is the hardest thing that you can actually feel. It's a feeling, especially when you're sitting and you can see the wrong. And we know that you can correct the wrong in so many ways. And sometimes silence is the way to really manage, because you've got to manage your own ego inside of you, because yourself wants to retaliate.
Yeah, mentioning the ego.
The ego wants to retaliate. Like, hello, you're not better than me. So, but then again, if you have that inner strength that's been built over the years, that you've been learning it through actions of others, over the years, the most things I've learned is what not to do. I've seen people go head to head because confrontation, and each one has a right. Because when you're angry, you want to find out, why are you not happy with me? And you want to correct, you want to justify. But when you learn and you realize, really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bikhud haqqi. We say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just.
Yeah.
We talk about it, the merciful, the most just, and this. But when it hits you hard, it's so hard. But the most important thing is, for me, is I know, while I've been through it, I know, you realize you're down. But when you come back up more resilient, more able to resist the whispers of the shaitan. Because the shaitan whispers to you, you're better than that. Go and tell them, prove yourself. Go tell them you're better. And then you think, if by this time in my life, those that need to know will know, and those that don't want to know, they don't need to know. So when someone comes and says to you, so and so has said this about you, right? It's like, I say, lakum dinukum waliya deen. Just let it, but it hurts, right? But most importantly, I think the ukhuwwah is a baseline that we need to develop for each other. Because otherwise you've got no reference point, right? And right now, there's a humanity in crisis of lack of ukhuwwah, right? Lack of connection, right? It's not just the Ummah, because Allah created us all so different. Yet there's a purpose of why we've been created to live with each other. And Gaza has been that lesson that has brought out so much, that some of us can see the reality and others can't. You can't tell the difference between real news, facts, or fake news. But I go back to what Nemat was saying, it's making dua. Sincere dua, that we are able to see the real from the not so real. In that moment of confusion, you're feeling the pain, you're feeling the injustices happening. But where I think we as people of faith, we come together and we understand the meaning of the relationship for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in action. We don't do on to others what we don't want others to do on to us. But at the same time, we hold justice as a banner, and that can only be done when we practice it.
Yeah. And that is about having, especially because, why does this matter for us as Australians, here in so-called Australia? Why? Because it's about having that unapologetic Muslim identity, right? So, and we've spoken before about, how during the war on terror, we were like, Islam means peace. It comes from the root word salam. It means peace, and we're all about peace, and we'll condemn this and condemn that. And we have moved and shifted as a community, and we've grown a lot. But what you're saying there is, but we need to maintain those connections with one another, right? That ukhuwwah between one another, and giving that grace to each other, so that we can, push back on anti-Muslim racism exists. So how do we do that if we're not together with each other?
On that point, subhanAllah, earlier, I was asked about the report, veil discrimination report that we launched in 1994. And one of the young women said, oh, so you had discrimination in those days?
Islamophobia.
Islamophobia? Yes, we did.
Yeah.
So, and part of building sincere ukhuwah is knowing what your brothers and sisters have been through over the years. Just because you are born now, you're learning to walk. Someone else has walked that pathway before you. And that's the meaning of ukhuwah, is connecting the dots, bringing people together so that you are developing and evolving in a much more informed way. Because as a grandmother, I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to be better than I. And as a leader in the community, I want everyone I come in contact with for me to hand over all my knowledge and for them to prosper and be better than I, right? But I didn't have that before, but I learn't it.
Yeah.
I learned it from what I saw others did not do, right?
So with that, on the way that we can, do ukhuwah in action, we can be with our families, in our community, through our work, through our study. How would it look within our families?
Okay. Well, for me, what a rich conversation. There's so much more we could talk about, but I think Hajeh Maha said, we need to recognize what we're made up from. What are we navigating? We do have a nafs. Everybody has an ego. And if we don't discipline our nafs and discipline our ego, it can rule us and, run. That's how tyranny and oppression and all these things come from. So, yes, there is a nafs. There's also a ruh, a soul. There's a mind. Allah gave you aql, and then we've got the whispers. And then we've got, who are we as a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in this dunya? Like, he put us in this dunya for a reason. As a Muslim, as a believer, we understand our purpose. Even if we all sway. The believer's journey is like this. Only the prophets went like this, subhanAllah. So when I remember that, yes, I remember my significance and my insignificance, but it's very balanced, because sometimes when we're talking about kindness and forgiveness, it can seem very passive.
Yeah.
And it's not passive,
No.
because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you a purpose and a role. Whether you're a believer, whether you're a wife, whether you're a mother, whether you're an academic or a community, whatever, sister, a daughter, we have duties, we have roles and obligations, and that all sits, it's not like segmented, it all connects, subhanAllah. So the individual person does matter in terms of their health and their well-being and their ability to understand their role and their purpose and all of those sorts of things. So I just think it's important that, this exists within a framework that we have to at least acknowledge and articulate for ourselves to understand.
Yeah, well, it's like there are layers, and they interact with each other at different. We talk about intersectionality, right? As one of the flavors of the mind.
We are that grain of sand on that mountain of humanity. And I was listening to someone else was saying that we can be a grain of sand on the beach. There's two different sorts.
Yeah, you can go up high.
You can go up, or you can be flat, or you can be washed away and end up on the other shore. Are you going to be still the same? How are you going to take your journey along with you as a person? Like you said, Nemat, like as a wife, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, as an auntie, as a leader, as this. How do you combine these together? Well, this is part of our Islamic tradition, is you give everything its haqq.
Yes.
That's why we have
Right.
its rights. Yeah. That's why we have roles and responsibilities. We have job descriptions. We have all of this. So you can't judge a person on one thing, right? Because you can't really be perfect at everything. Something has to give. So when that gives, this is where that sincere ukhuwah comes in, even between a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
There is that very essence of ukhuwah, right? That you're not waiting to pounce on the other person when they make a mistake. So in a family, yes, of course there will be misunderstanding. That's part of growing up. Your siblings will argue. It's good. But how does a parent interfere or come into play? Do you take sides? Why do you take sides? How do you actually balance it? Because this is what you're giving, that sort of like you're mentoring in a way, and your kids mirror what you do. And then they can better it, then inshallah, better than you. So I think, ukhuwwah in action happens every single moment of our life, even in our own bodies,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we can think that, growing up as Australian Muslims in a very Western world, we can really think that all that stuff only applies in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I actually think part of like what, I've benefited so much from MWA is actually understanding how much that is ingrained within our Islamic ethos and our philosophy, and that you don't just take your hat off and you walk through the door and,
Yeah.
you actually need to cultivate that within yourself and within your family and within your health. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. Someone who loves you, we talk about, operating from a place of love. Sometimes we think, well, if someone genuinely loves you, they'll be honest with you. They will correct you. They will guide you, but they'll do that with dignity and with respect. And I think sometimes there's this idea of like, your relationships. There's so many relationships. You've got your relationship with Allah. You've got your relationship with yourself. You've got a relationship with your husband. You've got your relationship with your siblings. But they all have a function and a role to play. And we need to model that connection to each other is so important, because it can be a very lonely world, a very lonely, disconnected society. We're seeing mental health issues rise. This is not a coincidence. We need to cultivate that environment, and we need to do it every single day. We're not going to be perfect. We make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
But we need to have grace. And I know at a macro level, we always talk about we need to shift the systems, and we do. Don't take away from that. And I know, sometimes talking about the individual can be a cop out for, if we, from that. But systems are made up of people, and we are made up of our shared humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not just say, "Oh Muslims," He said, "Oh humankind, oh mankind." And so I think we need to not, we need to keep that kinship, that connection, that sincerity alive. Because if we don't nurture it, if we don't excavate, cultivate, and prune, things don't grow.
That's right. That's right. And I'm just reminded now, as Nemat was talking about the hadith of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, when you have conflict and you disagree with your brother, what do? You step back. You don't confront for 3 nights, right? For 3 nights. Why 3 nights? To give you time to digest it, to give you time to deal with your own ego. So when I'm responding, I'm not responding in a way that is very much I want to win. In conflict resolution, talk about win-win solution resolution.
Yeah.
Well, this is our Islamic tradition.
Yeah.
That's why we step back for 3 nights, 3 days, and then think about how do we respond. When we respond, we have to respond with hikmah, right, with wisdom. And when we give advice, first, before I give advice to you, I must advise myself first. That's the hardest thing. So unless I am very, very grounded in my own ukhuwwah, with my own body, with my own organs, then I'm not going to be able to really project that. And then you can pretend, but that's not your genuine interaction.
Exactly.
And that's where in families you're talking about, you have to be very genuine.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we say, like in your families, almost you show the worst side of yourself, right? Like you'll be all proper and polite outside when you're interacting, and then
That door.
Yeah, and then at home you're like, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, why is that?
Yes.
And if we really, really want to look at it, there are a number of things contributing to it. But often if you're in a safe place and everything is, safe for you, that's where you feel safe to drop everything, because everything outside has pulled at you. We talk about resilience, and as Muslims we have to have resilience, and it is exhausting. If day in, day out, you're just the fact that you have to, for so many, wearing hijab and going to uni, going to work, where you're still the only Muslim, the token Muslim, the representative Muslim, that takes its toll, right? So taking a step back and just acknowledging the effort that everyone is putting in, that you as an individual have to put in just your everyday interactions. And it comes back to what we've all mentioned is sincerity, right? So the term that we're looking at as sincerity Islamically is ikhlas, right? Ikhlas, sincerity. That's your foundation. And if we're not sincere, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're not going to wait 3 days, 3 nights. We're going to respond then and there because I
That's
need to
right.
defend my ego. I need to
Exactly.
defend myself.
Exactly.
So how do we maintain sincerity? Because when it comes to advice, I can, look at you and say, oh, I can see you're, not doing this. So I'll tell you, right? You need to do this, this, and this. But there are conditions for advice, right? So, there's a saying that nasiha is not a fadiha, which means advice is not an embarrassment. It's not exposing someone.
Yeah.
So it should be done in private. It should be done at a moment where if I'm advising you, you're ready to receive it. You're not going to be defensive. And that, am I the right person to give you that advice or am I not? Should it not be coming from me? Is that just going to make matters worse? So, but that self-accountability, that muraqabah, vigilance, right? Always taking ourselves to account. And if we're doing that, then it's not about the other person anymore, right? It's all of those things, but about me with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because ultimately, when I'm brought before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's going to ask me.
That's right.
And going to question me, and no one's going to come to save me. So what have I done, and how have I been able to uphold, right, my Islam in a way that is enacting all of those things, right? So on that sincerity, how do you do it, Nemat?
Oh, see, I hate talking about this now because I feel like, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's real, but no, honestly, like you do have to renew. I honestly do renew my intention. I try to renew my intention every single morning. I do 1,000 things in a day.
Yeah.
My day has probably 7 or 8 shifts that I clock on or clock off to. I have 4 young children. I'm a working mother. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a daughter-in-law. My in-laws are overseas. I'm cooking for my father-in-law. I'm doing all these things, and I'm trying to invest in my children in what I hope is a holistic way, around presence of being, when I'm physically with them, actually being emotionally present. Like you said, kids go through a tough day too.
Yeah.
They have to navigate friendships and bullies and expectations and all these things that we also navigate, as adults, whether we're women or men, So what I really try to do is I do try to renew my intention every day. I do try and do the little du'at along the way that help me recenter myself, even if it's before this podcast, just, reading Surah Al-Fatiha, and then remembering that those little things, that text message saying, good morning, or hope you have a good day, or, what, I'll drop off food for you, and taking it off my sister-in-law's plate, or what, all those little things are sincerity. And I believe that you have to have a connection between your heart and your mind. Because I feel like when your mind leads, it can take you to, we can be very arrogant and we can be very quick to respond, or we can cut people down. And then but your heart needs to be connected to people, and your heart needs to be connected within yourself. Sometimes we need to wake it up, stop operating like a robot, So sincerity is renewing your intention, remembering your purpose, connecting your heart and your mind, and making all the little stuff that you do every single day. We all have to cook, we all have to wash, we all have to clean, we all have to vacuum, we all have to do all those other things in life that just, it's trying to create purpose in them at the same time. So that's a little bit of what I do. I'm sure there's others that are much better than me at it.
Yeah, I think sincerity is all of what Nemat is saying about. But I think I just imagine a child. A child is like, it's a reflection of our nafs. Child continues would do things out of, they react. Children react naturally. So how do we deal with children? How do we deal? We're very kind with children, or most of us, and we take time. Yeah, we take time, but that takes sincerity. You need to do it lillah. So the sincerity comes from the purpose of why I do what I do. And I look at I actually have to be conscious of listening to myself, listening to my thoughts, because my head is very noisy sometimes. There's a lot going on. So in the morning when I'm having that cup of coffee is part of shukr lillah, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the beautiful smell of the coffee, the ability to have that cup of coffee, that grounds me. Right? That cup of coffee in the morning actually grounds me in a way that is still, I'm still in that sort of natural state. Yeah, that hasn't sort of, everything's clouded it. But at the same time, it gives me that purpose of understanding that, yeah, there's a lot of thoughts in my mind. There's a lot that I have to resolve so that I don't use this to blame other people. Because a lot of time we go into things and we become angry, we become like, blaming. And do you realize that a lot of it really is part of what we are thinking? Yeah. So what we need to sift it. I see sincerity is sifting through everything that is happening so that you start actually looking at how am I going to interact throughout my day. Yeah. And when sometimes I need to stop after a particular action or a meeting or an event to renew my intentions so many at a deep level. Because even at a surface level, I can do all of that, but I'm still angry. And most of the time, I'm angry with myself. I'm feeling guilty about something. I should have done this. But then I translate that into she should have done better. Right? But I've renewed my intention. So my nafs says to me, but you've done you're very sincere.
Yeah.
When my nafs whispers, you're very sincere, I know I've got to go deeper.
Yeah.
So there's not one solution to getting your sincere.
And I think also, though, it's you can't do it by yourself.
No.
Right? So it's because our lives end up being so isolated, right? We seem to be connected more than ever, yet disconnected more than ever. And then when we just try and take ourselves to account by ourselves, and if we don't have just someone to share, to guide us, and it could be a mentor in an official mentor capacity, but it doesn't have to be, right? It could be your sister-in-law, it could be your friend, it could be your neighbor, it could be your work colleague. And the other thing is we can take different things from different people. Yeah. Not one single person is not going to be everything, right? Exactly. And it's like sometimes we have too many expectations of others, but we also have too many expectations of ourselves. And when we fail ourselves, we have that guilt. And so we start to defend ourselves by then attacking others. All in our own head. There's so much that happens
It's all there.
in our own head.
That's right.
So if we are really, right, because it feels like as Muslim women, okay, we're Muslim women, we were, I don't know if we're still classified as young, we were young ones, we were youth. Everyone is facing different levels of challenges, right? You've got your immediate, but then it feels like what's happening to Muslims around the world is just that constant thing, that sort of that, people say the veil's been lifted. Yeah. That we know, all right, this is just how it is. And so what responsibility do I have then for the Muslims that don't live around me, for the people that don't live around me? What am I supposed to do? Because it can fall into, we're talking about ukhuwwah, right? But it can fall into a sense of helplessness, right? Where we feel helpless and we lose hope. And that then falls into dangerous waters when then we lose hope, we lose faith. And then we disconnect from people and we withdraw and we're not our best selves, right? How do we protect ourselves from that? Or when it does happen, what can we do? What are some things that we can do?
Yeah. Look, I think this is a reality of life. It happens to all of us. But we've got to be honest and sincere enough with ourselves to be able to call it out and retrieve and be supported in that way, because we can't continue to keep going from the way that we go when we're feeling that sense of anxiety, that sense of helplessness, because that's all we're seeing continuously. And yes, we can read advice, and people will tell you, take time off social media, don't do this, don't do that. But if I'm addicted to social media, no one can stop me. My brain will make sure that it'll tell me that, no, you need to do that. So unless you have the right people around you, that you can be honest enough and to have that conversation around that and to learn and to better yourself and do one bit at a time, one little bit at a time. But when you're healthy, when you're unwell, it's like clearly I see that it's like when you're physically unwell, you've got to recognize, well, at the moment, I'm really spiritually so depleted. I can't do this anymore. And it's okay, shed tears, and that comes from a sincere place. How do we provide that safe, trusted space for a lot of us to be able to be vulnerable? That's where vulnerability comes in. So vulnerability comes from that sincere, deep, sincere place of saying, I can't do this today. I'm exhausted. But when we go back to what you say, we hold people up to a level where they are astaghfirullah, they can't make a mistake and they can't be weak, they can't be this, then I'm not sincere enough, right? My sincerity comes in is when I see people at a level of humanity. It doesn't matter how well they are, how well acquainted, how well versed in everything they are. We're human. We make mistakes. And there are days where we can't deliver. And from a sincere place, I wish that my sister in Islam, that's where Ukhuwwah comes into action. My sister will say, don't worry about it, Hajeh. It's okay. Don't worry. We say it all the time. We say, look, life is not going to end, right? But we say what we've got in our culture now, in the work culture, we say, if it's not crisis, slow it down. So we remind ourselves to slow down. But slowing down with purpose is where you're able to actually look at yourself and encourage yourself to be sincere, to say whatever you need to say in the moment.
Yeah. What about Nemat with you? And also, because I know before this conversation, we spoke about the concept of resistance through Ukhuwwah as well. How do we bring that in?
I think it's something we all have to navigate, because like we can go into like being hyper productive and hyper doing and then we can go to the other extreme where we do feel completely depleted or apathetic. And I think that's pretty dangerous. So I think, there's a few things around tawakkul, having that reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan and that trust within each other. Like Hajeh Maha said, it doesn't happen overnight. You need to walk with consistently for a very long time and it's not just when things are going well, things when aren't going well. So it's about that trust and that vulnerability, and it's actually courageous. It's actually courageous to be vulnerable, but that's where the magic happens, and that's where true growth happens. It doesn't happen inside your comfort zone. It doesn't happen in not reaching out a hand, asking for support, asking for help. So I think that's important, having that tawakkul. And I was introduced to the concept of samud, which is perseverance and steadfastness. And I think, when we talk about even relationships, always be kind and forgiving. That doesn't also mean you don't be honest and hold someone accountable and, pretend you don't see wrong when you see wrong. So I just find it's like finding the middle ground, it's that the balance, sirat wasati, like it's the middle path. And Islam is the middle path. And in this world, we're being pulled all the time in the different directions. And so that's why you do have to try and hold on to your center and keep others with you, because it does take a village, as they say. It doesn't have to look like what you think it might look like. It can be cultivated in so many ways, helping. There's so many ways that I see it manifest day to day. The mums who are, not working, who keep you connected on the WhatsApp group for the kids and reminders and all these sorts of things that we actually, sometimes we don't realize even just our presence in a room is a form of resistance.
Absolutely.
Because it changes the conversation. It changes what people think they can say without a mirror being held up to them. And when we talk about like resistance, I've actually had to learn to reclaim that word. Because I've been in very white feminist settings where I've heard that term used and everyone's like, wow. And I'm like, my jaw hit the floor. What do you mean you can use that word? If I said that word, it would have a totally different meaning. But no, it is a form of resistance, actually. Like you said, it's an emotional exchange. It's an energy exchange. But why do we do that? Because we do have a greater sense of purpose. We do have to be proactive in cultivating the life we want and the world that we want to leave behind. This is not the first time we've seen oppression. It's not going to be the last time we see it. Do we say, oh, it's happened before, who cares? Oh, who can? No, no. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and we can do the best that we can in that. But we do need to be. We've always talked about resilience in a beautiful way, but if you can't have resilience without resisting and holding on to who you are, and it is a challenge in this day and age, and it's getting harder. And yes, the veils are being lifted at different levels, but I think if you do take an akhira lens, it does remind you of we do need to engage in community, in systems, in structures. We need to dismantle them sometimes. We need to push against them, but at the same time, to not take away from, or not to just willingly accept one definition of something.
Yeah.
If actually there is hypocrisy in human rights. Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Actually, there is fallacy. There is power, there is inequity. And to be honest, in the work that we do when we're working with victim survivors of, domestic and family violence, we see that at micro level all the time. There's things like DAVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. And then you grow in the world and you realize, oh my God, all these things, all these tools, all these mechanisms, actually the micro often does reflect the macro, and there is state sanctioned violence, and there is illegal occupation, and there is oppression. That doesn't mean I'm pro this and I'm anti you. No, it just means facts are different to fiction. And even when people are trying to skew facts, that doesn't mean I need to go along with it. And I actually want to. And I think now we have different forms of media and communications, and we don't need to just accept what we used to accept before. But that also means we need to remain centered and balanced in that, because we can go too far this way or too far that way, and that's not healthy for anyone.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you've just touched on, Nemat, and sincerely appreciate what you've just shared, because that sort of hits really deep within my old heart that's been through I've had lived experience of so much of what you've just shared, and I think the steadfastness comes with that rahmah, with that compassion for ourselves and others, and we wake up every day resisting.
Yeah.
Every day we tell our children, when you go to school, make sure you look after yourself. You do this and don't do that. So it's part of our innate world is we resist the wrong and invite the right. But at the moment, what you were clearly identifying is that the balance of right or wrong has been tipped on the other side, right? So our role, I feel like we have a role in humanity, is to continuously uphold the right of humanity to exist equally and justly. Without justice, you can't have peace. Without peace, you can't exist. And to coexist, you need to be able to say, I'm not the most important thing in this world. The world revolves around all of us. I'm not so special. Who am I? I am just that grain of sand. But without that grain of sand, there is no mountain of humanity, right? So we need to have that respect, but at the same time, it's about a mindset.
Yeah.
What you said earlier, if we're not sitting in that room, the conversation takes a different way. But when we are in the room, how do we sit in that room?
Yeah.
We are conscious. There's so many times and millions of times where we felt uncomfortable sitting, where we see that our resistance is not being, is seen as something else, or our resilience. So what we would like to see, going back to that sincere intention in action, bringing that ukhuwwah beyond your little group or family or your friends, where you are part of that big, uncomfortable, sometimes agitated space, but keep the ukhuwwah strong, develop it, move beyond the retreats where you go and talk about love and all of this. That's important, right? But at the same time, what am I going to do with the tools I bring with me back, and not fear standing for justice, right? So I think where the key now I see from my old age is that we need to stop creating that sense of fear-mongering, right? And ostracizing people because they're telling the truth. And it happens in families. You can't stand up against a group of people, but you do. When you do, you feel uncomfortable. Where does that uncomfortability comes from?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's in the pushback,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So knowing, and I suppose knowing how wide is our margin, right? Where can we, how far can we push? And also in relation to representation, right? Not all representation is good for us, right? So how do we make sure that we're supporting those who need to be supported in the best possible way, bring in that sincerity, maintaining that ukhuwwah, because it means maintaining connection with people.
Yeah.
So not ostracizing. So it doesn't, just because I don't like the stance you've taken, or, you know, and we're talking within our community, that we try. So it's not an immediate, we don't immediately shut people out. And also there are protective measures that a person needs to take to look after their self.
Yeah.
If being, you know, in a certain place or with certain people is going to harm you in a way, then you need to separate yourself from that as well. So as we wrap up this conversation, what's one final message that you would share in relation to ukhuwwah in action, with some practical actions that we can take away as well?
So something that I'm thinking at the moment is, you know, yes, we plan and they plan, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. But at the end of the day, relationships are important. Connection to people and one another is important. That doesn't mean we need to go with the flow. We can't have an opinion or assessment or whatever. But when I think of, there's a story of the companions that is coming to me around, you know, when and you'll know this better than I will, Fida, so fill it in. But in terms of, you know, when I think the Sahaba were going to like from war or coming back from from a battle, and then Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave directions, and some stopped and prayed, and some continued. And they
To
asked,
either delay
yes,
it
to
or
delay
not.
it or not. And I'm sharing it with you because, and Prophet ﷺ he chose to say none were wrong.
Yeah.
And so we get so sucked into this one way is the highway. You know, there's maybe things that we don't understand, and that's okay, but we still need to exercise our agency and our capability with wisdom when we need to. So, and just maintain the kinship ties. Maintain the kinship ties because they are important. The barakah, the mercy, the rahmah, the forgiveness, the compassion comes from different sources that we may not see and we may not know. So do not be miserly with where the barakah comes from in your own life and in your own self. So that's something I would leave people with, because when we're just talking, we live in a very polarized world. We live in a very dichotomy. Everything is yes, this good, no bad, and there is room for understanding. There is room for connection. Obviously, that doesn't mean you excuse the right or the wrong, but you need to see the essence of people and the humanity and check in on each other. Really check in on each other, because a lot of the time the signs are there, but we just don't notice them.
Yeah. Thank you, Nemat. Yeah. I think when we talked about the systems and the systems made of people, a lot of times we react and we hurt other people because we're so angry with the system. I think if anything, we need to respect each other, and we need to acknowledge where we are actually, who and what we disagree with when we're talking about the system as an overarching system. The same thing is when we're dealing with family members. We've got to meet people at their own, where they're at, where a child is at, where a young person is at, and we don't know everything. Like clearly what you were saying now, we don't know everything. And so I think if anything is that know that every day you will learn a new thing. Remember, when we open our eyes and heart so that other people can feel that opening, right? Invite people in, so that you are learning. We are learning from each other. And every day, unless at the end of the day, when I'm taking accountability of my own actions and my words throughout the day, then I realize there's something not right. I didn't learn something today. Then go back and find out, where is it? What happened? Where was the obstacle that made you stop your day? And I will, from my experience, it's always my nafs. Because when my nafs rises, it's like that, the bubbles on the milk, and it just sort of tips over, it boils, and it stops you from hearing what the messages that are coming through. Whether you are getting, the nafahat that's coming through, the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether you're hearing it from a young person. And you learn every day from young people. Respect young people so that you are respected. Because we know that in our Islamic tradition, you respect a child, a young person, because they haven't been in this world for a long time. So they are learning. You respect elders because they've been so long and they are old. So respect the wisdom in people, respect the youth in young people, children, but can only happen when we have respect from within. And that can only be done when we are actually sincerely putting that into action. Whether we make a cup of coffee for someone or even asking someone to make me a cup of coffee, that in itself will be inviting in itself, subhanAllah. So I'm learning, and I know that I'm not perfect, but I'm just sharing what I've started to learn. And one of the things is that before I used to be invited or someone wants to bring me something, I'll say, oh no, don't worry about it. No, don't. No, we're not having this. Now I make an effort to say, thank you, Jazakallah khairan, come and let's share. That's an invitation. So go a bit further than what you normally would go.
And I think that's a beautiful way to really wrap it up, in that, ukhuwwah is not a theory.
No.
It's not words. It's responsibility. It's action. It's sincerity. And it takes effort. It really takes effort, and it takes sometimes us doing things we may not be comfortable with or we may not be used to doing. And that sincerity, looking at ourselves first and foremost in the way that we interact with others and the way that we respond. So I really, think that we've been able to just delve a little bit further into this conversation. And we, really want to ask the listeners, those people who have just come across this podcast, this episode, if you feel like there's someone who maybe could benefit from hearing this message, share it with them.
Yes.
And that is part of establishing that ukhuwwah as well.
Yes.
These small little things. I know when I receive a message of, I saw this video and I thought of you, a little reel or something, I'm like, oh, wow, that's it. And it really does uplift you.
It does.
Right? So share the message, and we really do hope to continue this conversation, different topics, but looking at it from different perspectives and really being able to unpack it for ourselves and for the community as a whole, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan.
Wa iyaakum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.